It's 1450 KMMS, 1340 KPRK. My name is Chris Griffin, and calling me on the telephone this Monday morning, Commissioner Pam Bucy with the Montana Department of Labor and Industry. Good morning, and a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, and thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. What is the state of labor and industry in Montana today?
Actually, very good. We have more people working in Montana than ever in history. Wages are going up for the past 6 years, also very good. And we do have an interesting challenge that we're facing, and that is the upcoming worker shortage in Montana. Over the next 10 years, we anticipate about 130,000 people will leave the workforce, baby boomers who are entitled to work, many of whom have stayed in a lot longer than they wanted to. But we only have about 123,000 16 to 24-year-olds to fill that slot. We have been talking about equal pay. Greater labor force participation by women is one of the solutions to a labor shortage.
And that leads me to the topic I wanted to discuss with you. It has been an active, ongoing debate on this very radio station between myself and listeners. Is there a gender wage gap?
Absolutely. And frankly, I don't think there's much debate about the fact of a wage gap. I think most economists, nearly every economist agrees there is a wage gap. And what I have really tried to talk to people about is the reasons for that wage gap are incredibly complicated, and they aren't malicious, and they aren't all about discrimination. Certainly some of them are, but really all the economists that have studied this and all of the literature, one of the things the governor asked us to do in the executive order establishing the Equal Pay for Equal Work Task Force is to study this issue. And we have one of the most comprehensive literature reviews of all of this data in the country. And what you learn is, only about 8 to 12% of the gap is attributable to discrimination. There are lots of reasons that the pay gap occurs. One of the biggest is occupational choice, and I think it's very interesting to talk about industry, education, experience, part-time work, time out of the labor force, race, age, and union status. All of those things play a role in the wage gap. But absolutely, women in Montana working full-time year-round earned about 74% of what their male counterparts earn. And when you factor in part-time work, women earn about 67.5% of what their male counterparts earn, which makes us about 39th in the country for gender equity in wages.
The prevailing argument from my listeners that do believe there's a wage gap, but attribute it specifically that women do not negotiate well.
That is absolutely a fact, and that is a reason. That's one of the myriad of reasons for the wage gap. Absolutely, that happens, and there is great data on that subject. That women out of college, with the exact same training as a young male right out of college, ask for as much as $10,000 less than their male counterparts. So the great thing about that particular aspect is there really is something we can do about that. So when you look around the country, we are really starting to see a lot of incredible wage negotiation training going on. And sadly, again, for women, there's also a lot of data that demonstrates women can't negotiate for pay in the same way that men can. If women are as aggressive as men, that is often used against them, and not just by men, but by women as well. So there's very interesting and very specific wage negotiation training going on, and it's going on for women just coming out of college, and we are doing that. That's one of the things the task force has completed, is we have what we call Smart Start training that's occurring on campuses all around the state that really teaches those young women how to negotiate for pay, how to do market research analysis to know exactly what they're worth, and know how to ask for it in the right tone, demeanor, and how to have a frank conversation about this. And that has been incredibly successful. And then we also have a wage negotiation training for women reentering the workforce that helps them learn how to negotiate, for example, for a consistent schedule or for benefits, for those kinds of things that women have, especially women re-entering the workforce, have a difficult time negotiating for. So what I like about the fact that that's one of the factors is there really is a way to think about it, to tackle it, and we are doing that. And I think there's starting to be a lot more awareness with most big employers and certainly within our college campuses. So that's a real good start.
It's 1450 KMMS, 1340 KPRK. On the phone with me, Commissioner Pam Bucy of the Department of Labor and Industry here in Montana. Also, the co-chair of the Equal Pay for Equal Work Task Force established by Governor Steve Bullock. You're in town. You're in my hometown today and tomorrow at the University of Montana in the Strand Union Building. And you're going to be bringing some special guests.
Absolutely. We have an incredible schedule at the task force, and or at the summit, and I would really encourage many businesses to go because we have some incredible human resource information that's going to be presented. How to recruit, how to retain, how to talk about this issue, what this issue means for your business. And it really is important to businesses because what also the data is really starting to flush out is businesses that have high levels of diversity, including women, do better. They make more money. They weather through difficult economic times better. So I think it's I think it will be incredible information. But our keynote speaker is Jen Welter, and she is the first female coach in the NFL. Just a firecracker. She's incredible to talk to. She has a very interesting story. She coached for the Arizona Cardinals. She was the linebacker coach. But she is highly entertaining, and I think has information that will be helpful to, every mom, dad, and kid out there thinking about this issue.
And all those issues will be discussed today and tomorrow at the Strand Union Building on the MSU campus. One of the things that prompted me to contact the governor's office and by happenstance to end up meeting you and for this conversation is an issue I never thought about, is because women earn less during their working careers, they end up shortchanged when they start to receive their Social Security checks.
Oh, absolutely. When you think of it on an annual basis, it's a lot. Mm-hmm. But when you think of it over a 35-year career, and so the national statistic, the Social Security statistic that you read about this is over a 35-year career, the national equal pay gap is 77 cents on the dollar, so it's actually less than Montana's. But those earning discrepancies accumulate to incredibly large sums. So across the entire workforce, this adds up to an average career pay gap of about $434,000 for college-educated women. So that's a lot of money when you get to retirement age. And even, they calculated it for Social Security, but they've also calculated it for IRAs. So the median balance for an IRA account for women is about $30,660, and for men it's $43,449, and that's as of 2015. And what's even more disturbing about that is women live longer. So women living on retirement income live an average of 21.6 years, and men live an average of 19.3. So they're living for longer on dramatically less. So, yeah, the cumulative effects are huge over an entire career. But even the, $24,000 a year discrepancy means a lot to Main Street, Montana. That's money. Women are the number one consumer. They buy more consumer goods dramatically to the tune of 78%. That's Main Street businesses that are not seeing, essentially $24,000 a year being spent on groceries, rent, clothes, because that's who buys those goods is women.
Commissioner Bucy, my final question for you, and with the setup of this, please correct me if I go wrong anywhere in the setup, that women earn less. That is a fact. You have identified the reasons in some of the causes why women earn less. Am I doing so good so far?
You are.
Now, with that said, If the gender roles were reversed, would this still be in the discussion phase, or would it have been changed and equalized years ago?
I think so. But again, what I really like to emphasize, because what I don't want this to be is a men versus women issue. This is really a family issue, and it's a significant economic issue. There are reasons for that.
Mm-hmm.
There are important cultural reasons why this has happened. Women did often stay home and raise children, but I do think that having this discussion is important because the fact is occupational choice, for example, is a significant reason for the pay gap. Women choose to be teachers and they choose to be nurses, and those occupations pay less than engineers or construction workers. But what it does do is, I hope, is make everyone less defensive. Those are things that we choose, and as a society, we have to talk about why we value work that way. We have to talk about, why women do phase out of engineering programs. Why do they, self-select out starting in middle school of science and math programs? Those are really important, I think, cultural discussions to have, but they aren't anyone's fault. So men don't have to feel picked on. This isn't, this really is cultural. Women do it, men do it. The other significant reason for gender or pay disparity is women don't get promoted at nearly the rate as men, and the hiring pools all contain women. So what I like to emphasize is this really isn't about somebody doing somebody wrong. It really is an important cultural discussion and a really important economic discussion. And the more we talk about it, the more people understand it. I think the more they recognize that. And much of the fixes are people just understanding and being able to, recognize their own biases and think about it in how they recruit and retain and promote within their organizations.
Will we achieve equity in our lifetime?
I surely hope so, and I'm going to devote as much time as I can to it. I have a daughter. It's incredibly important to me. She knows she's entering the workforce with all the information and all the education and all the skills to be able to negotiate for herself and to anticipate that her employers are going to want to pay her the same.
Commissioner Bucy, it is a pleasure to meet you. Do what you do today and tomorrow up on the MSU campus with the Equal Pay Summit here in Bozeman. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I thank you for your time today.
You too. Thanks so much for having me.